During the Mexican Revolution, back in 1913, soldiers were up to some tactical tricks. It was a Yale University pipe smoking competition back in 1959. Lieutenant Walter Tuning, catapult officer on the USS Enterprise, leaped onto a burning plane. It was to save the pilot. This all happened back in 1943. Makeup tests were underway for The Exorcist back in 1973. They were busy with the makeup for Linda Blair. It's the 1920s, and you're at a bustling railway station in Emporia, Kansas. You see a classic motor bus parked nearby, probably waiting to ferry folks to town, or maybe just picking up passengers. Right next to it is a delivery van, ready to haul goods. It's a scene straight out of a history book, a snapshot of life in America almost 100 years ago. Up on the Eiffel Tower, there's a man standing at the very top. Someone's curled up in a sleeping bag made of animal skin. Cozy, right? Way back in the early 1900s, imagine this. A fellow and his goat-powered vehicle. Can you picture it? The very first Harley-Davidson factory dates all the way back to 1903. A car just rolled up to a subway station in Boston. This happened way back in the 1930s, so you can imagine the scene. Back in 1955, an American amateur inventor named Russell Oakes had a pretty neat idea. He came up with a special fork, one that could actually twist your spaghetti for you. This is a rather creepy Victorian take on Humpty Dumpty, you know, like something out of Alice Through the Looking Glass. It's from around 1873. Elvis Presley and Priscilla Beaulieu are saying their vows during their wedding ceremony. It's happening at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. The date is May 1st, 1967. It was the village of Volendam in the Netherlands. The year was 1947. It was April of 1960, and a terrible scene unfolded. Imagine Dr. King with his young son working together. They were removing a charred cross from his front lawn in Atlanta. It was a grim reminder of the hatred they faced, a symbol of the violence that threatened their lives and the cause they believed in. Imagine a little one-room schoolhouse tucked away in rural Florida back in the 1870s. It's a simple place, maybe with a porch out front and likely filled with students of all ages learning together. A baby ran popular sports events in New Jersey from 1946 to 1955. Around 1930, there was this tenor, Enrico Murzio. He was getting ready for a performance, I imagine, because he was practicing his singing. And where do you think he chose to do it? In the bathtub. Can you imagine trying to hit those high notes while taking a bath? It looks like someone set up camp right by the road. Must have been a fun trip. This was back in 1920, and they had this incredible auto tent. Imagine that. Looks like a fun group. There's a bicycle club gathered together, the Kendall Green Bicycle Club in Washington, D.C., way back in 1884, and I don't spot any of that stretchy lycra stuff anywhere. A young mother's got her little one with her, somewhere on Hong Kong Island. It must have been back in 1946. Back in 1942, the FBI's fingerprint files were something else. Imagine huge, organized cabinets packed with information. It was all a really labor-intensive process, back before they had digital systems. Just think about all the work that went into keeping those records. Excuse me, sir, my aperitifs, please, from 1975. Back in 1969, during a shoot in Durango, Mexico, seems like there was a bit of a break in filming. Looks like Clint Eastwood and Shirley MacLaine were taking a moment. Wonder what they were chatting about. Maybe the story of 2 mules for Sister Sarah? Back in 1900, in Chicago, imagine this. A large lecture auditorium at Rush Medical College. You could practically feel the weight of history there. In 1936, the New South Wales Police in Australia decided to have a bit of fun. They turned their motorcycles into these makeshift chariots and had a race. Can you imagine the sight? Back in 1973, a photographer named Ron Galella would wear a football helmet around actor Marlon Brando. Apparently, Brando had once punched him, breaking his jaw and knocking out 5 teeth. The ruins of Poland after World War II. It's November of 1946, and he's in Warsaw trying to capture a moment amidst all the destruction. It looks like this was taken of Benito Mussolini back in 1942. The Bowery is just teeming with life. You can see a super busy sidewalk and street scene happening right under the elevated railroad in New York City. This was back in 1905. Private First Class. Mickey Rooney is putting on a show for some infantrymen of the 44th Division. He's doing some impersonations of Hollywood actors, which seems to be going over well with the crowd. He's part of a 3-person team, traveling around in a Jeep to bring some entertainment to the troops. This was back in 1945. Back in 1955, Playboy magazine ran a story. It painted a picture of a future where being gay was totally normal. Straight people, on the other hand, were breaking the law, and there were even anti-straight mobs marching right through the streets. From a theater production of Alice in Wonderland, way back in 1910, there's a scene straight from Wonderland. It's the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, of course. It's around 1903 in New York City. You're strolling down the street, and there, on the sidewalk, is the classic newsstand. The kind with all the papers and magazines piled high. They were a staple back then. You could grab your headlines, a quick read, and probably a bit of local gossip all in one place. The worst flood in American history caused a whopping $580 million in damages. This devastation happened in Pennsylvania back in 1889. The parade was almost over, nearing the very end. You could see a giant fish balloon bobbing and weaving as it floated along Broadway. It was a sight. This all happened back in 1929. It's a tough scene, really. A family, traveling, looks like they've set up camp. They're at one of those automobile camps, the ones folks relied on during the Great Depression. Seems they're in California. This was back in November of 1936, so it was a while ago. I imagine they were hoping for a better life, just like so many others. It's 1930. A true icon of the era, Marlene Dietrich, is making her mark. She's a real trailblazer, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community. It was December of 1940. You could feel the energy buzzing in the air, especially on this street corner in Stark, Florida. It was a real boom town back then, right in the middle of a defense district. It was 1914, and a young Grand Duchess was in the air. The whole building was completed in just over a year. They even managed to stay under budget, coming in at $40 million, and finished well ahead of schedule. The Fountain of Time sculpture, created by Lorado Taft, is set in Chicago's Washington Park. You can really picture it taking shape back in the 1920s. The scene is filled with women soldiers all wearing gas masks. It looks like it's October the 28th, 1942. There's a little kid, maybe around 5 years old, standing right in front of a refrigerator. They're reaching up, trying to open the door. The kid is determined, you can tell. They're probably after something cold and refreshing, like a carton of milk. It looks like everyone's having a blast. They're out sledding, and from the looks of it, a bunch of them are hanging onto the back of the sled as it goes down the hill. It seems like a lot of people were really enjoying themselves. An artist is hard at work, probably in the 1960s, meticulously recreating the surface of the moon. They're using a combination of paintbrushes and airbrushes to achieve the effect. It looks like they're really focused on their task. This must be for some kind of project. It's great to see the detail they're putting into it. Walking on stilts is already impressive enough, but this man took it one step further and skated on them. Fritz Dietl was photographed practicing his skills with 4-year-old Pat Kemp at the Empire Pool in Wembley. This happened in 1937. Here's a pretty unusual picture. There's a Victorian woman, laughing, and it's believed to be from the 1880s. It's not every day you come across a shot like this. There was this little kid, maybe 6 years old, all geared up. It must have been a blast zipping around Buenos Aires back in 1936. It's a group of aircrew and they've got a mascot with them. This was all taken back in 1943 at the Cressy Royal Air Force Flying School. It looks like quite the scene. Back in 1925, during Prohibition, you had folks scrambling for any drop of liquor they could get. There was a bystander, probably eager for a taste, trying to catch a cup of moonshine that the police were pouring out. What a wild time it must have been. Believe it or not, there were folks trying to make swimming easier way back in 1929. Someone came up with the bright idea of swimsuits made entirely out of wood. The creators claimed these suits would somehow help you in the water. There were 2 young girls, all smiles, perched in a goat cart. This must have been back in the 1930s, judging by their clothes. They looked so carefree, probably enjoying a sunny afternoon out for a ride. The scene is pretty innocent, really. Just a couple of young guys, maybe teenagers, huddled together. They're engrossed in something, leaning in close. Seems like they're sharing something pretty interesting, maybe a bit naughty. It's one of those moments, you know? Secretive and full of shared giggles, probably fueled by something like a copy of Playboy. It looks like we're back in Berlin, in the year 1925. A doctor named Heinz is giving someone an injection. The fluids are coming from a live hair, and the doctor hopes it will lead to some kind of rejuvenation. Apparently, this is coupled with ultraviolet radiation and a bit of gymnastics to help things along. The man was facing away, you know? This was in 1947, a couple of years after the bomb. You could just see the shape of his back, and you got the sense of everything he'd been through. He was a survivor, that much was clear. You couldn't help but wonder about his story, the things he'd witnessed in Hiroshima. Around 1956, Gracie Fields, that amazing comedian and singer, is taking a break. Looks like she's enjoying a nice cup of tea with Bud Flanagan, the vaudeville entertainer. I bet they had some stories to share. It's a scene from 1944. The artist's name was Bernard Cole. I imagine this shoemaker taking a break. Maybe it's lunchtime and he's enjoying a moment to himself. The story takes place in Normandy, France, back in 1944. A tank crewman badly burned is the subject of the scene. It was 1958, and a pretty special meeting was happening. Alfred Hitchcock was there, and he was alongside MGM's famous Leo the Lion. That's a pairing you don't see every day. It's a scene of pure white. It's like looking into a blank canvas, a pristine expanse of color. Back in the 1930s, this is how they used to check condoms. It was New York City, back in 1957. You wouldn't believe it, but there was a llama right there in Times Square. Can you imagine that? Dazzle camouflage was incredibly popular during World War I. Here's a photo of Albert Einstein and his wife Elsa hanging out with Charlie Chaplin. They're at the premiere of Chaplin's film City Lights. It was held at the Los Angeles Theater in Los Angeles back in 1931. Over in Paris, France, there was a Red Cross club called the Rainbow Corner, and things were really lively. A bunch of GIs were going wild after they got their hands on a special edition of the Paris Post. The headline blared, "Japs Quit." It was 1945, and you could feel the relief and excitement buzzing in the air. The floodwaters in Elmira, New York, were a disaster. It all started just days before when Hurricane Agnes hit the Florida Panhandle back in June of 1972. It's a scene from 1898, and a woman from the Apache tribe stands with her child. A young clockmaker is hard at work at his desk. It looks like he's in the 1860s. Here's a cool photo. It's of an extendable caravan built by a French engineer. This was back in France, but we don't know exactly where. It was made way back in 1934. Back in 1933, picture a drive-in movie theater. Can you imagine it? The Nuremberg trials. It was around 1945 to 1946. Looking down, you could see the defendant's dock. It looks like we're stepping back in time to 1940, specifically to a scene at the Republican. I imagine it was a bustling place. These telegraph stations were set up for all the political writers. Can you picture it? Typewriters clacking, the air buzzing with energy and the urgency of getting news out. It must have been quite a scene. The hands of a watch, frozen forever at 8:15 in the morning. This was in Hiroshima, back in August of 1945.